Welcome to Winfield Leadership Cockpit Conversations. I'm your host today, Morenti Rego, and we're presenting to you a podcast where we interact with different business leaders from different industries. I'm here today with Precious Murenanyika, who is the Group CEO for Winfield Strategy and Innovation, Hedge Talent Solutions, and Fent, a manufacturing company based here in Harare. Precious, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, Morenti. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. So my first question on leadership. How do you define leadership, especially looking at the context of Zimbabwe? What makes a leader thrive in this business environment?
Thank you for that question. And it's a great question. And I've done a lot of introspection, reading around it. And I think the most relevant response to that I can give you is something that, I came across when I was reading about the MIT competencies for a great leader. And that resonated with me so well when I think about the Zimbabwean context, right? And there they spoke about four things. So they said, what makes a great leader, number one, is the ability to have what we call visioning. And what is visioning? It is the ability to set a vision so clear that the people that are following you can see exactly where you want to take the business. It's not an ambiguous or an unclear vision. It's the most clear and actionable vision that you can come up with.
Okay.
And then it's not just that. It's then being able to say, so where are we today? And helping people to understand the starting point and then building the steps for how do we get from where we are to that vision, to where we want to get to. And I think there are very few leaders that have the ability to do that, to cast a vision and then to cast a journey for how to get there. So for me, that's the first thing. And in a context like Zimbabwe, right, where everything is always up in the air, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of change happening.
Definitely.
That skill remains one of the most fundamental skills, to be able to continue on a set vision despite the change, despite what's happening around you, right? That's the first thing. The second thing for me is around sense making. So what is sense making? Sense making comes from recognizing that we have a multi-generational workforce. So we have people from different generations, and each of these people view the workplace differently. And how do we help everybody to make sense of what is happening, to make sense of where the business has come from and where the business is going, and where the business has come from and where we are today? Leaders who are really good at this normally sound like broken records. So they keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again, because they want people to understand the journey the business has walked and the journey the business is about to get to. And for me, that's a critical skill for leaders in the 21st century. So that's the second one. The third one is what we call relating, right? And relating, again, is really, how do you relate to people of different generations, people of different genders, people of different ethnicities? How do you manage diversity? Because the workforce of today is a global workforce. So, yes, and the workforce is no longer limited by geographies, right? You now have people of different ethnicities working in different countries, and there's so much, that can come out of that diversity. But if you cannot relate with all these people, you can miss the opportunity to create value out of that. And I think for me, I think sometimes I think about the Queen of England, for example. And I think she had that skill, which is the ability to relate to different people of different generations. And I think at some point, she ruled for so many years, right? And I don't think that monarchy would have survived and continued to be relevant if she didn't have that skill of the ability to relate, to the different people that she was leading. And then finally, of course, they talk about the skill of inventing, which is a key competence for a transformational leader. The challenge in business today is that everything is the same.
Right.
Everyone is doing exactly the same thing.
Oh, especially in Zim.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And only transformational leaders live on the edge of similarity. So they have a little bit of what is the same with everybody else, but they have an edge of creating something completely new, bringing value, bringing change. And those are the leaders who help society to move forward and who help communities to evolve. And I think for me, that's again a skill of the 21st century. How do we lead change? How do we lead our businesses to change and to evolve? Yeah. So those are the four things that I'll talk about.
Yeah, I feel like there is so much to unpack in what you just spoke of. Sensing, relating, inventing, and what's the first one?
Sensing, relating,
Vision.
inventing, and visioning.
And
yes.
visioning.
And
wow.
visioning.
There's so much to unpack there. I'd like to go on. You mentioned on relating how the workforce right now is multi-generational and diversity, like it's everywhere. How do you then manage such a diverse group of generational employees? How do you relate and create something that makes sense to different age groups, different generations? Yes. I feel like that could be a pitfall that people find hard to navigate around.
It is. It definitely is. I think it's one of the biggest challenges for 21st century leaders. How do you relate to four generations of people in the workforce, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, we in the workforce today, we have we have different generations, right? We have, first of all, your baby boomers, right? And your baby boomers are people that were born in 1946 to like 1964, right? And then you have people that we call your millennials, people who have, before millennials, you have Generation X, which is people that were born in 1965 to about 1980. And then you have millennials, which is people like me, who were born in 1981 to 1996. And then finally, you have the Generation Z, which are people born in 1997 to 2012. So those are the four generations you have in the workforce today. Now, what brings complexity is that each generation is shaped by the experiences of their season. And so how they look at work is shaped by the experience of the season that they were in. So if you think about the first generation that I mentioned, which are the baby boomers, for example, and also the Generation X in Zimbabwe. These are people that were born in colonial Zimbabwe, right?
Yes.
And in colonial Zimbabwe, it was a privilege to have a job. It was a privilege to work. And if you did get a job, you better keep that job because you don't know where the next one is going to come from. And so loyalty for them is a big thing. A permanent contract of employment for them is a big thing.
Job security.
Right. Job security for them is a big thing. But not only that, they also believe that work should be hard. I mean, they grew up when things were tough, and they believe that work should be hard and it should be difficult. The harder it is, the more motivating, the more gratifying.
The more fulfilling.
Yeah, in the Shona culture, they even have a saying which says, "Kufa kwe murume kubudaura," which means that, for a man to be called dead, like your intestines have to be like out in the bare. And what that says is that nothing can kill you until your intestines are exposed. Like you have to hold on, for whatever. So all these things about mental stress and I don't know what, it's not part of their dictionary. They don't understand that language, right?
Yeah.
So these are people who say work should be hard, right? And they are in the workforce. And then after them comes the millennials. These are people born after independence, so 1981. And at that point, Black people becoming aware of their rights, right to education, the right to work. And people were starting to really focus a lot on education and to really to really focus a lot on empowering themselves and self-development. So what's important for millennials is really in the workplace. They want opportunities for career development. They want to be given opportunities to grow. They also want to work for a company that has a high purpose, because they're also about social impact and all of those things. So they believe in that. But they believe that a job is a right. I have a right to a job. Yes, and I have a right to education. And this is the breed of people that, they were raised to look for a job. They were trained to look for a job. And it's hard for them to make a shift and start to go into entrepreneurship. It's a really big change in mindset, right? And then from them, after the millennials comes the Generation Z, the children of the millennials. And these people, they were born in an era where education was no longer just a right. It was there. It's given. And for them, it's like, I choose to work. And I choose not to work if I don't want to. So it's not a privilege to be employed. It's a right, but also I have a choice to work or not to work. So when they come to your workplace, they're not looking for a permanent contract of employment. I remember I offered a guy here at Winfield a permanent contract of employment, and he was like, I'm not sure if I should be signing this. Like, why should I be stuck here, right? Because that's not what they're looking for. They're thinking, I'm coming to work because I choose to work, but I want flexibility. I want happiness at work.
So job security is not on their top of their priority list.
It's not. I want my mental health, right? I want comfort. I want to be happy because I choose to be here. If you don't make me happy, I'm going to quit, and I quit without notice, and I'm just going to go. Now, here you have those generations in the workforce. Now, try getting a leader who says work should be hard, to lead someone who says my job should make me happy, right? When you bring those two together, it's a big source of conflict. It's a big source of stress. And this is why mental health issues have become a big thing, because the people who are leading and the people who are being led have two completely different ways of processing and understanding work. And leaders almost have to take a course to understand this generation. I remember I had to, when I was CEO, I had to, undergo what we call reverse mentorship, which is having someone who is younger in the Gen Z to mentor me on technology and on what that generation wants, while I mentor them on what it means to lead and to develop a career. And so, both of us were mentoring each other, and that really helped me to understand the power of technology, because that's what that generation understands. They want it easy and soft, and technology does that for them. And I think, those are the complexities of managing a multi-generation.
Wow, I can clearly see how generations can just clash based on different ideologies, how they're brought up. So that's a very good point. Leaders should be aware of the different generations that are there and what motivates them. So my next question is basically for the young people out there. How can someone achieve their full potential in their career journey? Like, we have a lot of people who are young or watching or keen on developing themselves to be future leaders. How can they achieve their full potential? What do they need to do?
Thank you. That's a very good question. And it's a question I wish someone I was younger, because it would have helped me to do so much, right? In the time that I had. Anyway, I would answer that, and just give 3 responses to that. The first one is that the greatest challenge we have, and the reason why people don't reach their full potential, is that many of us, when we go to school and we finish our A-level and we have to choose a degree program, usually our parents make that decision for us, or if it's not our parents, we go to a university and some university administrator decides, based on our points or whatever it is we have, what degree program we're going to do. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, really. But what is wrong is that in the end, this degree that we get has absolutely nothing to do with our talents. It has nothing to do with what we're good at. It's a degree that's been randomly picked for us by somebody. But the problem is, we then shape our entire lives around that degree. And so we can live and die and never reach our full potential because of that. And so for me, the things that can really help people to reach their full potential, the first one is to do with as you educate yourself, what do you need to do? The biggest mistake people make when they're choosing degree programs, master's program, PhD programs, is that they go for depth and not breadth. So what do I mean? So you have an accounting degree, and then you go and you do a master's in accounting, and then you go and you do a PhD in accounting. Like, all you're doing for the rest of your life is accounts. And so you never have the opportunity to actually learn anything outside of accounting. But the thing is that as you go higher and higher in business, as you rise from becoming a clerk to becoming a CEO, you lead with breadth, not with depth. So the higher you go, the more you are now leading at a general level. So you need to know a little bit of accounting, a little bit of marketing, of logistics, of operations, of finance. And so you can't lead with depth. So you need more breadth as you go up. So how do you develop breadth? What it means is, as you amass your qualifications, as you take on a higher qualification, if you did an accounting degree as your first degree, then your master's must be broader. It can be in strategic management. It can be in business administration. It can be in business intelligence, but it's a broader subject. And your PhD must be in an even broader subject and a particularly different area. When you do that, not only do you develop breadth of knowledge, but you can actually discover something that you're good at. You could do a course in business law and actually discover that, oh my God, you're actually quite good and passionate about law, which is something you're not going to discover when you're doing the same subject over and over again. And then I also say, I've seen young people do like 5 degrees, right? If you have 5 degrees, no matter how, actually not even 5, if you have 10 degrees, no matter what, in this society that we live in, the sad thing is 10 degrees don't make a master's. So if a program requires you, or a position for a manager or a director requires you to have a master's degree, the fact that you stacked up 10 degrees will never make you qualify for that position. So it doesn't help to amass a lot of qualifications which are at the same level. Always, if you want an extra qualification in a different field, always go for something higher than what you already have. So that's the first thing for me, breadth of knowledge. And same thing, breadth of expertise. When I worked in HR as HR director, I would get a lot of young people that, someone would be working in marketing, and we would go to them and say, we want to give you a job in operations. And they would say, no, but this is not what I trained for. It will ruin my CV. And just by saying that, you miss the opportunity to develop breadth of expertise. And breadth of experience is what helps you to rise to the top. When I was working as HR manager, I remember my coach actually said to me, Precious, whatever you do, you're never going to be CEO by being good in HR. And you have to show versatility in areas outside of what you were trained to do for people to start believing that you can give more than just expertise in that specific area. And so every year when I was in Lafarge and when I was in my previous company that I worked for, every year I would ask my boss for more, and I would get more. I would ask for, a different job. And so I went from HR director to communications director to strategy director, to being in charge of construction, affordable housing projects, and all of that. And then before you know it, your profile just looks like a CEO profile. And that's how, you amass that knowledge. So for me, that's a critical one for developing yourself to your full potential. The second one is getting a coach. I mean, I don't even know the extent to which I must emphasize this point. I was lucky that when I went into business, I had a coach from the very first day that I landed in my first job. And that helped me to grow really, really fast. And so I became general manager, which was an MD role at the age of 26. That was like very young. And then CEO of Lafarge Cement Zimbabwe at the age of 38. Now, what does a coach do that everybody else can do? A coach is just usually somebody that has, that's perhaps 10 years ahead of where you've been. And so they can teach you the things that they learned over that time so that you don't make the same mistakes. You can make new mistakes, but you're always ahead of your game. And so they make the journey shorter, the journey to the top shorter for you. And so I hear a lot of people say, no, maybe getting a coach is admitting that I'm not good at what I do. No, it's not. Look at this. The best of the best in soccer has a coach, right? Messi. The best of the best in Formula One racing. What's the guy's name? Michael Schumacher had a coach, right? The best of the best in golf. Tiger Woods had a coach. And then you're not even the best of the best in anything. And then you say you don't need a coach. So it's a counterintuitive thing, but it really says, if you want to move fast, if you want to get to your full potential fast in this lifetime, which you only live once, by the way, having a coach can accelerate your growth and help you to get to where you want to get to faster. And then finally, I'll talk about risk taking. We live one life. We only have one life. And in that one life, we have a chance to create and to make things happen. I watch this channel where there are retired people reflecting on their lives and the lives they live. And I keep hearing the same message every time, and one woman said it so clearly for me. She said, what was the point of me being alive? I never even tried anything. What was the point? And for many of us, we try new things from the time we are born until the age of 25. After 25, we die. And we're buried at 75, literally. We don't try anything new. We live the same life year after year after year. And people who reach their full potential are people who are willing to take risks. People who say, I'm going to try this. If it fails, so what? Like, nobody's going to die, right? And it's okay. If it fails, I'll dust myself up and I'll try again. And I find that a lot of young people, they make decisions based on their fears and not based on their hopes. So today you wake up and say, I want to start a trucking business in your mind. And then suddenly you say, no, but drivers steal fuel. No, so that's not going to work. So you shut the business in your mind simply way smaller than the opportunity of what value you can create out of that. And I think we miss a lot of opportunities because we make decisions based on our fears. Think about the guy who started Airbnb, for example, right? If he had come to you and said, listen, my friend, let's start a business where strangers come and sleep in your house. They come from anywhere in the world. They sleep in your house and they pay a few bucks for sleeping in your house and they go. What would you say?
Tricky,
right? Tricky. Why? Because you're thinking, oh, they will steal my things. What things? But this is how we make decisions. We worry more about loss than we think about the opportunity. And so for me, if young people want to reach their full potential, they have to make decisions based on their hopes. And they have to go for the opportunity. They have to take risks. This is the time to do it. This is the time that we have. Yeah, I think that would be all.
That's very relevant, especially to young people, because when you're young, you have less to lose.
Yes, you have less to lose. Exactly. You have less to lose.
Definitely.
It's, when you are in your 40s or 50s, you start to think about, okay, I can't take this risk because of my kids, because. But when you're young, you can do that. You absolutely can.
Yeah, so you have to be daring, take on the opportunities, be daring out there as you forward your career. Now, talk to me about some of the political mistakes that young people make, because I know political savviness is something that is very essential as someone is rising up the ranks of leadership. Can you talk to me about some of the biggest political mistakes that young people can easily make within their career journeys?
So that's a fundamental question, right? And when you look at it, this is not something that you learn in school. You only learn it the hard way when you're in business. A lot of people, young people, come out of university and they come to work thinking, I know everything. right? And I have a right to tell people what to do. And normally when they get into the workspace, they think they're sharper than their bosses. I mean, that's fine. You very well could be sharper than your boss. We can understand that. But that doesn't mean you can outshine your boss, right? That doesn't mean you can outshine your boss. Your boss is your path to the top. Your boss is the only person who sits in rooms where you are not and decides on your next move. And if your boss is not happy with you, never mind what anybody else says, you're not going anywhere, right? But a lot of young people think they can sit in a meeting where their boss is there and their boss's boss is there, and they can say something that their boss did wrong. They can stand there and say, no, but I told him, we can't do it this way. Well, you could look good for that moment, but you'll pay for it. And you'll pay hard for it, right? I love this saying that, the Queen, before she died, said at some point to say, I know there are many people, right, around me who believe they could rule better than me, who believe they are smarter than me, and they could do this job better than me. But for better or worse, the crown landed on my head, right? And what does that say? It means today I am the leader of the moment, and your job is to support me to succeed. Right? And that's what it says. When you're working under someone, your job is to make your boss look good. And as long as you can make your boss look good, your work is going to be easier and your journey to the top is going to be easier, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is, one of the things young people don't understand at work, which is a political misstep as well, is what is alignment, right? Because alignment is a big competency. It's actually a leadership competency. Are you aligned? Now, alignment, there's a very thin line when you talk about alignment, right? There is a point when a leader is looking for opinions. Like at that point, you can say anything you want to say. You can put your views on the table. You can argue your points, because for the leader to take the right decision, they need as many perspectives as possible. The more perspectives they have, the better their decision quality. Okay? So if you are sitting on that table, your job is to put your perspective on the table. However, once the decision has been taken, it doesn't matter whether you agree with it or not. Beyond the decision point, we align. We move together. It's our decision. It's not the boss's decision. It's our decision, and we support it. If it doesn't go right, we learn from it. If it goes well, we learn from it. And that's it. So people need to understand, at what point do we align? If you continue to argue after the decision has been taken, that's what we call in leadership misalignment. Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting, and it's important to know the distinction, because sometimes there is a fine line, and sometimes it's gray, and people can overstep it, thinking like they're still trying to make their case, and while they're actually now misaligned. So I feel like that's a very important step. So right now we'll take a break, and after the break we'll talk about your entrepreneurship journey and how we can inspire young entrepreneurs, and we'll talk also about people who are willing to rise up in their career ranks, what they ought to do and what they ought to improve.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. Welcome back to Winfield Cockpit Conversations. We're here with Precious Murenanyika. So my next question, Precious, is what's the one thing, if you were to point out to only one thing, that helped you rise in your career very fast?
If I had to point only one thing, I would sum it up as ownership.
Ownership.
And this is something I learned again from my coach, which was that, if you want to succeed fast in your career, you need to learn how to show up at work with a high level of ownership. And, in his view at the time, he said, the biggest headache that any business owner has is, where can I find people that can lead my business and run my business as if it was their own. And if I can find those people, that person, then I would make them a leader. Because most of the time, when people go to work, they show up with what we call a functional hat. So I'm just here to do marketing and that's it. My job starts here and ends there. And when you do that, you miss completely the bigger picture of how everything sums up. How do we make money and how do we lose money? And so for me, I learned very early in my career that leaders who succeed are people who show up with ownership. And what does that mean? It means thinking like the owner of the business, acting like the owner of the business. On a day-to-day basis, small actions and big actions. Small actions. I mean, the owner of the business would never leave the windows open, for example. They're thinking about their assets. They would never leave the lights on. They're thinking about saving energy. They would never leave the place unlocked because they're thinking about securing their assets, right? That's someone with an ownership mindset will look at those things. Someone without an ownership mindset will say, it is not my job.
It's not my job.
Somebody else has that job and somebody else needs to fix that. And that's a big difference, right? Even when you're negotiating or you're buying something, let's just say you're buying a bottle of water. Someone with an ownership mindset, someone without an ownership mindset will say, I was told I need to look for 3 quotations. And so I've got these 3. One bottle is $3, another one is $2, another one is $1. So the cheaper one is the one I'm going to buy, right? It makes sense, but it doesn't make sense. The owner will say, even if the cheapest one is $1, water doesn't cost $1. Right? Water doesn't cost $1. And I'm not going to buy it simply because I've got 3 quotations and this is the cheapest one. They're still going to go further and negotiate to get the right price, which is either 30 cents a bottle or 40 cents a bottle. And that's how it works. So you negotiate hard as if you were the owner of the business. But not only that, when you show up in management meetings, in exco meetings, you don't show up with the functional hat. You don't show up and just wait for the time they say, oh, now we're discussing marketing or IT. And that's the time you raise your hand now to say something. You actually show up with a high level of accountability for everything that's happening.
Interesting.
Is this conversation helping us to make more money or to lose money? And once you start to understand that, then you start to understand what it means to be an owner of a business. And I think for me, I learned that very early in my career, and it helped me to rise fast. I remember the first time I was promoted, this is one of the things I was told, that we know you're young, but we're going to make you general manager because you have a high level of ownership more than anybody else. And I was only 26 at the time, and I was being appointed to be general manager for the furniture division of Furniture Paradise, which was OK Zimbabwe at the time. And, leading 31 branches across the country at a very young age, only because I had a high level of ownership. I knew nothing else other than HR, but over time, I had to learn that job to be effective in it. And so for me, if anybody asks me, ownership for me sums it up,
And from how you're saying it, I can sense that some people can grow older without even developing a sense of ownership in their work. And someone can take ownership while they're still young.
Very true.
Wow,
Very true.
That's a very important point. So take ownership, in charge of your career, in charge of your line of business, take ownership, take charge. So that's a very important concept. We've talked a lot about advising people in their career paths. Let's talk to people starting businesses. You have founded one of the fastest growing consultancy companies in Zimbabwe, Winfield Strategy and Innovation. You have also founded Hedge Talent Solutions, which is a big HR consultancy company. You have also founded Fent, which is a very fast growing as well, manufacturing company. What advice can you give to a business owner in Zimbabwe who's still trying to make it, or they're still young, they're looking to venture into business? What advice can you give them?
Thank you for that. So for me, I think, the truth is that entrepreneurship is hard. It's not, it's not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah.
It's definitely not, but it's rewarding.
Okay.
It's very rewarding. And I can say that, I can say that wholeheartedly. It is very rewarding. Now, what makes it hard? What makes it hard, first of all, is that when you start that journey, the gains only start to come very late. And if you're going to start an entrepreneurship journey and think that you're going to start making profits month one, month two, year one, forget it. A real proper business, as you set it up, the first year, be ready to lose money, be ready to make mistakes, be ready to learn the market, and be ready to sink money just to make money. And I think that's what's important. You got to sink money to make money. If you don't sink money, you're most likely just making bare bones, enough money for you to just have a meal, but not enough money to really create a multinational business or a sustainable business. When I started Hedge Talent Solutions, which was my very first business at the age of 34, I remember when I started the company, I started it in my backyard, right? Even though it has grown big to what it is today, I started it in my backyard. And that business went for 6 months without a dime in revenue, not even profits.
Wow.
In revenue. Like, we were advertising, I had people working there, we had a website, a recruitment website, we were looking for people to give us jobs so that we could, create value for them. And even though we were doing a lot of work, we never got any money. We got our first payment in the 7th month of that business running. And I remember in the 6th month, my husband saying to me, this your business, really, are you sure of what you're doing? And I mean, this is the journey of many entrepreneurs. For 6 months, that business never made a dime. But in the 7th month, we had our first payment of $5,000. And from there, it just took off. And that company has been growing exponentially ever since then. Yeah. But what does that tell you? At that time, I was able to see those 6 months through because I was working. I was somewhere, I had a paycheck, so I wasn't struggling. Okay. Imagine if I had nowhere else to get money, and that was the business I was waiting for. And I had people working there who wanted to be paid by me, and I had expenses to cover, and I had 6 months without any revenue. Do you think I would have lasted 6 months? I doubt. Yeah. And so what does that say? It says you don't leave your job to start a business. You start a business so that you can leave your job, because it allows you to outlive that painful period of no revenue, of no profit. Calculated risk taking. Yeah. And I think for me, that's one thing that I would say to entrepreneurs that want to start their businesses, that the first year is never easy. You know yourself that our furniture manufacturing business took like a year to break even. And that's a long time. That's a long time to be sinking money, but you have to sink the money, right? The second thing I'll say is, if you're going to do business, think big. Right? Think big. Don't focus on losing small. Focus on winning big. And what does that mean? It means creating a business that can outlive your life, a business that can exist into perpetuity. And how do people build businesses like that? They do it using systems. Systems run businesses and not people. As long as you have a business model that depends on human beings for it to function, that business will not survive. And a lot of startups don't live beyond 5 months, beyond 5 years, because of that. So At the center of entrepreneurship is the ability to develop systems that can run your business so that even if you lose people, no matter how often you lose people, new ones that are coming, they just get into the system and they continue with the system. And, it continues like that. And for me, that's what helps businesses to succeed and to survive. So that's the second thing. So the final thing for me is that in Zimbabwe, particularly, the environment is really volatile. A lot of things are changing every day. And for me, I say, don't focus on the things that you cannot control. Focus on the things that you can control. Because the fundamentals for any business are the same. It's about growing revenue. It's about reducing costs. And those are the two things that you have control over. How do I grow my revenue? And how do I reduce my costs? Everything else, the policies, the politics, the economy, anything else, the environment that's not within your control, don't split hairs over it. For people that are starting new businesses.
I love it. And I love how practical they are, because you are telling people like business is hard. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. Because a lot of people just get into business and they're dreaming of just making money.
From day one.
You have to be aware of the risks that are there, and you have to take the calculated risks. Don't be afraid of the risks, but look at it in a measured way.
Sure.
My next question is about Winfield's strategy innovation. It has grown at such a fast rate. Can you tell me the secrets behind such a fast growth rate, why it has managed to take root so fast and grown so wide into different areas in Zimbabwe and in the region?
Indeed, Winfield has grown, and it has grown fast. And at the center of that for us has really been our vision for that business. Zimbabwe, we were thinking global. And so we positioned the business that way, and we've been building towards that. We've also had a very clear growth strategy for our business. And what I've loved is just the discipline of focus in the team in terms of how do we deliver and how do we grow this business. So everything that we said we want to do by when, our growth strategy for growing in terms of the products that we offer, we've implemented that. The growth strategy in terms of growing in different geographies, going into Zambia, into South Africa, into different markets, we've also implemented that. So I think the team has had an impeccable laser focus on what is important for this business to grow. And that has really helped us, to succeed. The third thing for me that's helped us to succeed is just the amazing, amazing people we have. I have been very intentional about the kind of people that we hire to become blue bloods and the kind of attitude, the kind of leaders. And for me, I've understood over time what it takes to succeed. And for you to succeed, and if you're building a business to succeed, you need people that, have grit. And people that have high resilience, people that can rise from setbacks. That's what helps businesses to succeed. And when you have a lot of people with that kind of competence, your business then becomes a business with grit, the business itself. And I think for me, that's what has helped us. I really love the team of blue bloods that we have and what they've been able to do for the business. But most of all, is the leadership. Everything rises and falls with leadership. And besides my own leadership, I look at the leaders we have in Winfield, and wow. Like I am in awe of the kind of stuff they do every day to make this business succeed. So what really makes a difference, I think, it's the people you have, it's the strategy, but most of all, the discipline of executing that strategy, which has really helped us to be where we are. Yeah.
People, strategy, discipline. I love that. I totally love that. I'm going to ask a follow-up question on, you mentioned about your team and how they're high team performers. How do you motivate or ensure that your team is functioning at a high capacity as you do?
Yeah. Good question. When I think about teams, I reflect a lot on my leadership journey, and I always say, when I was working for someone, what are the things that made me feel energized?
Yeah.
What are the things that, when I had a boss, what are the things that boss did that helped me to feel energized and to want to do more? And I borrow a lot from those experiences. And I had, at some point in my life, one of the best bosses I could ever ask for. And I took a lot from his way of leadership in terms of how to lead the teams and help them to show up at their best, but most of all to achieve their best. And before I answer the question, to tell you some of the things I learned that I'm applying, you are on my team, right? Yeah. And I'd love to hear from you. What is it that energizes you every day about working here? And then I can answer my question. I hate to put you on the spot.
The question is turned back on me. Yeah, for me, I would say it's having a clear vision, because our vision is very clear. A clear vision and a clear strategy. It just helps you when you have clarity of focus towards the direction that you're going in. Right. And the second one, I would also point out to the great team relations that we have. Good. Our communication is top notch as a team. We are like friends. So work just goes easy, and it's easy to just harness yourself and just move towards one direction. And yeah, I would say those are my
those are your top two.
Yeah,
okay, great.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think I would put those as well. Relationships are important.
Yeah.
We must create an environment, and we've created an environment where people can build relationships that are beyond work, and that makes teamwork easier. Yeah. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing is skin in the game. I believe that people will show up at their best if they have skin in the game. What does that mean? It means if the business is succeeding, people must also succeed. Yeah. So our compensation model here at Winfield is such that if we're making money, the consultants are making money. Yeah. So there's a direct relationship between their income and what we are achieving. And that makes them show up more, push more, because they can see the results of their efforts. For me, when I was employed, that's one of the things that drove me. And so this environment really drives high performance. If you're not a high performer, I don't think you'd love to work here. Definitely. Because, you'd be thinking, others are earning more than me, because those who are high achievers would always be earning more. So for me, skin in the game is important in helping to motivate teams and help them show up at their best. And then relationships, as I said, and then autonomy. One of the things I loved when I worked was to be trusted. I really, would show up at my best if I had a boss that trusted me and said, you can do this, right? Go and do it. Versus a boss who said, show me what you did. This is not the right thing. I don't think you have the capability, but, just go and do what you're going to do and try. Yeah. So for me, giving people autonomy is a big part of motivating my teams. Yeah. I always give them the autonomy to try, to do what they want to do. And then I can come in right at the end to say, does this work? How do we make money from this? Yeah. And, does it make sense? And if it does, we continue. But I'm never in their space all the time, because I never wanted that when I was working as well. So I think for me, those are the main things for how we motivate our teams.
I totally love them, and I can attest to the fact the team here is great, and you are given ample leverage to think about your work streams, to organize yourself how you want, and to implement yourself in the way that you see best fit. So yeah, I applaud you on that. So, my last question to you is, what legacy would you want to leave behind? So, when people think about Precious Maureen Nanyika, what do you want them to think about?
Oh, you know, first of all, I personally want to live a full life. And what is a full life for me? It's achieving my dreams, but also making a difference in the world that we live in. The one thing that I've always worried about is how African businesses never live beyond their owners, is how African businesses never reach to unicorn status.
Yeah.
Very few, actually, African businesses ever get there. And through Winfield Business School, one of the greatest things I hope to achieve is to create a new generation of leaders, leaders who understand what it means to build a sustainable business, leaders who understand what it means to think about not only the profits of today, but also the future, the environment, the people that will live beyond us. I think for me, that's, if I could achieve that,
Wow.
if I could achieve that, I think, you can, when I die, you can dance. Like I will have achieved my life purpose. And so everything I do today, this business school, our business is really about that, making a difference to African businesses and creating a new generation of leaders.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I feel like that's very relevant looking at the leadership problems Africa as a whole has. So I feel like that's a very relevant mission. So thank you for watching. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Winfield Leadership Cockpit Conversations. Join us next time on the next episode where we will bring another guest and we'll talk about all matters relating to leadership and business. Do remember to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook to just keep in touch with us. See you next time.